Okay. So good afternoon, everyone. It's a pleasure for us to welcome you to this webinar, which is part of a series of webinars organized by the Consortium on Nurturing Values and Spirituality in Early Childhood. The topic today is the voices from the field and how organizations have integrated the spiritual development of children in early childhood in child protection and education programs. Before we begin, let's go over a few housekeeping rules. Firstly, we kindly ask all participants to mute themselves. If you have any questions or comments, please use the chat function. We will address these during the Q&A session. Remember that this webinar will be shared and available online in the coming days. If you require interpretation during the webinar, please select the interpretation tab and select your preferred language. So if it's Spanish, please select Spanish. If at any point you're struggling to hear the speaker, try unmuting the original audio. Maybe that will help. If you have any other issue, please write to us in the chat function and we will try to help you. Please also note that we will be extending the discussion on Twitter, X, using the hashtag Child Spiritual Development through the account @EthicsEducationForChildren. We thank you for your cooperation, and to start the webinar, let me introduce our moderator for today, Ms. Christina Kirby, who works as a program manager for education North America at Porticus. Christina, you have the floor.
Thanks, Vedika. Hello, all. Thanks for joining us today. And as Vedika mentioned, the topic of today's webinar is Voices from the Field, Integrating the Spiritual Development of Children in Early Childhood, Child Protection, and Education Programs. It's a pleasure to be moderating today's discussion. And today's webinar is hosted, as Vedika mentioned, by the Consortium on Nurturing Values and Spirituality in Early Childhood for the Prevention of Violence. The consortium is convened by Arigato International and brings together a host of stakeholders from academia, faith-based communities, civil society, and multilateral organizations to develop evidence-based and innovative approaches to integrate values and spirituality in early childhood in order for the protection of children from violence and the promotion of their holistic well-being. And so today we're discussing an important topic, really getting into the nitty-gritty of how programmatically organizations and communities can address the holistic needs of children by supporting their spiritual development. As many of you likely know, if you're here on today's webinar, in the field of child development, nurturing spirituality, particularly during early years, often remains underrepresented, underemphasized, or even absent from programming. However, we do know that the spiritual dimension is a key domain of whole child development. So in prior webinars, we heard from experts regarding the science behind nurturing spiritual development of children, as well as child rights and spiritual development. So today we'll get to hear from leaders in the field from across geographies and faith traditions who are integrating spiritual development into their early childhood programming. And more specifically, these representatives from a diverse set of organizations will share experiences and lessons learned from implementation of a specific toolkit, the toolkit Nurturing the Spiritual Development of Children in the Early Years. Shortly, we'll hear more from Maria Lucia about this, but very briefly, this toolkit was developed by the consortium to address this gap in the child development field. And it's really comprehensive. It summarizes the evidence base, as well as offers comprehensive tools to equip religious and spiritual leaders, parents, caregivers, and educators to foster children's spiritual development through child age appropriate activities and practices. And so today we have the privilege of hearing from faith actors, community workers, nonprofit team members, and religious leaders regarding their organization's experiences embedding spiritual development across contexts in Brazil, Mexico, India, and Pakistan using this toolkit. So I'll go ahead and introduce our wonderful panelists who are here with us today in order of country, alphabetical order of country, starting with Brazil. We have Dr. Nelson Arns Newman. He is an international coordinator from Pastoral da Criança. Second, we have Dr. Kezavino Aram, or Vinu, who's the president of Shanti Ashram in India. We have two guests today from Mexico. We have Esmeralda Limon Reyes, who is the Faith and Development Manager from World Vision Mexico. And we also have Maria Guadalupe Cortez, who we will call Hermana Lupita, who's the Provincial Coordinator of Education for the Franciscan Sisters of the Immaculate Conception. And last but certainly not least, from Pakistan, we have Ashan Jamal, Child and Women's Development Program Manager from Islamic Relief Pakistan. So thank you all for being here today. Before we dive into the questions, I'll pass it over very quickly. Through testimonies and commentary, we can have 4 overarching objectives for today's webinar. The first is really to kind of highlight the how behind implementation and integration of spiritual development of children as a critical aspect of holistic development within organizations' programming. The second is to really reflect on the importance of nurturing spiritual development of children as a manner to protect them from violence, as well as promote their holistic well-being. Thirdly, we'll share some of the benefits of nurturing spiritual development of children, as well as discuss how this may impact the relationships and working with the adults, right, who interact with young children. So parents, caregivers, and educators. And lastly, if you're not engaged in this type of work, hopefully this will inspire you to consider how integrating or embedding spiritual development in your own programming might be beneficial. So I now will pass the baton over to Maria Lucia.
Thank you so much, Christina. And it is a pleasure for me to be today also joining this very important webinar. I'm going to go through a very few slides. As mentioned, I'm the Executive Director of Arigato International, Geneva, and Arigato has been convening this consortium on nurturing values and spirituality in early childhood since the year 2018. And so, and the main purpose of this consortium was to think of what does spiritual development in children mean, and particularly how the spiritual development of children can be a contribution for children's well-being, for the flourishing of children, but also for the protection of children from violence. So let me start by asking ourselves, why attention to the spiritual development of children, and why is it so critical today? And Christina has already mentioned that traditionally childhood development practices and theories and programs have focused specifically on children's cognitive, physical, social, and emotional development as important aspects to ensure the children's holistic well-being. And surely they are. Vedika, if you can pass the slide. However, not very often we know that the spiritual development of children is integrated into these frameworks. And this may be due to several factors, including the lack of comprehensive research on what spiritual development is, the misunderstanding that spiritual development pertains only to the religious sphere, when in fact, spiritual development is an innate process within the child and is independent of the religious or other affiliation. So as you see, for us in the consortium, we see the spiritual development as central to the holistic development. If you go to the next slide, Vedika. So based on the scientific evidence during the last decades that have shown that the spiritual development of children is innate, it's natural to the child, so children are born with this spirituality, and the research that also demonstrates that it needs to be nurtured and cultivated for that spirituality to flourish. That research also speaks about a very important aspect, which is the relational spirituality, which refers to the linkage between that search for the sacred or for something beyond us and the search for intimate relationship with others. which is intrinsic to us as humans. So our research for something beyond is closely related to our search for intimate relationships, and this is what is called this relational spirituality. So brain scans have shown that the part of the brain that activates when people feel spiritual is the same part that allows people to bond and see the dignity and value in other people. We also know that the studies have that are designed to understand the spirituality in early years and the relationship with children, young children with God, the divine, the transcendent. Also very often understand that first spiritual development through the parents' love. So we know that the spirituality is intergenerational. So the evidence also shows that it is transmitted from one generation to another, so from the parent or grandparent. So based on this research, the Arigato International convened, if you go next, Vedika, a group of several organizations. And those if you go next, Vedika, several organizations, and ranging from faith-based organizations, academic institutions, also civil society organizations, UN agencies, and others who are working on child protection, education, child development, early childhood, to understand this aspect of the spiritual development of children. And if you go next, and a particular interest of this consortium was on how this can help protecting children from violence. Next, Vedika. And part of this is, of course, looking at the impact that that violence has on the children's well-being. And evidence also shows that, of course, violence and maltreatment of children impairs the decision-making process of children, their capacity to understand morals and values. Also, prolonged stress and toxic stress impacts the health, the well-being, the learning, the social, emotional well-being of children. And of course, in the first year of life, there is a negative impact on the brain development. And if you go next, Vedika. So in this process, also the impact of violence, we understood also that has an impact on the spiritual well-being of children. Abuse and other traumatic events breach attachment, the attachment and the trust and relationship with others, shatter the self, undermine the belief systems, and violate faith in God or others, which of course has an impact on one's spiritual life. So having all this in mind, if you go next, Vedika, for 4 years, this consortium started to look into the evidence, started to look through pilots into what are the benefits of nurturing the spiritual development of children and for the flourishing and how that can help protecting children. And there are these 4 areas that the consortium sees in a very direct contribution. The spiritual development of children has an impact on social, emotional well-being of children, the psychosocial mental health, children's resilience, and the development of ethical values. So the research has shown that older children whose parents have nurtured their spirituality have higher levels of predicted happiness. So there are research and studies that have shown that it contributes to the social emotional aspect. It strengthens interconnectedness with oneself and with others. And we know that family and peer relationships play a critical role in children's identity formation and self-perception. So children who have very low levels of peer connections or family connections experience higher rates of depression, of loneliness, self-esteem, and poor well-being. We also know that youth who, as younger children, were exposed to spiritual development demonstrate less aggressive behavior, less substance abuse, fewer high risk of behaviors, and less risk of depression. And that 2 generations of caregivers who have emphasized spiritual development children allow the children show 80% less depression as youth than children who did not. So the evidence is clear, and we know that spiritual nurturing of children has a clear impact on the social emotional well-being of children. We also know that its foundation in the development of resilience, particularly in children who have experienced adversity, by helping them to find meaning in life, reframing the narratives of loss, and helping to connect with the community. So there is particular research done also in adults and how the experiences of awe and prayer and meditation have proven beneficial beneficial for healing. But finally, also is a contribution to the development of ethical values and prosocial behaviors. And there have been studies as well, as 6-year longitudinal studies examining the connection between moral competency and spirituality in predicting adolescent risky problem behavior. So there have been found a clear link between morality and spirituality and reducing negative and risky behaviors. So the evidence continues, but these two Toolkit is a contribution to practically making those connections. So during the last year, we have engaged with several members of the consortium to initiate a systematic implementation of the toolkit that has been developed, looking at this evidence and looking at the connection between the spiritual development of children and the protection of children from violence. And then we have started implementation in 4 locations: India, Pakistan, Brazil, and Mexico. And using the toolkit, which is a series of booklets that are designed for organizations to integrate the spiritual development of children in their programs, are designed for organizations to train trainers, to train facilitators, as well as to work with parents and caregivers. So it's a very practical tool, if you stop the presentation, Vedika, and has activities for parents, for caregivers, activities that parents and caregivers can organize with children, and educational settings, but also in the family and in the day-to-day interactions. So I'm very happy that today we will hear from those who will be, or who are implementing in the field, and that are helping us also to build this evidence, which I think is very critical to inform the child development practices and frameworks as we move forward. So I leave it here. Christina, thank you so much.
Thank you so much, Maria Lucia, for the background, and really looking forward to diving in to our conversation with our panelists. So to get us started, I first will ask the panelists to share a little bit about their own context and how they are adapting the toolkit in order to support children's spiritual development within their own programming. So as Maria Lucia mentioned, this looks different in different contexts, which is great. The toolkit is really adaptable and can be embedded into existing programming. So the first question I'll ask each panelist to answer. I'll kind of pass it along and ask you to respond. So kind of our first question: tell me a little bit about your context and why integrating the spiritual development of children in your programs is a priority for your organization. And perhaps you can mention how you are embedding the toolkit in your programming when you touch on that why of this question. So could I please ask Binu to kick us off?
Thanks, Christina. I'm going to keep it short, but just share with you very much from the context of our participation. But before that, I want to thank Maria Lucia for that introduction, because as many of us know, we work with children in different capacities from different sectors. I come from the area of health, public health, and a definition of health, we say health is a state of physical, mental, social, and spiritual well-being. But we all know physical, we are very eager to define. We are very eager to define mental health now, the mental dimension. Social, we are getting a better grasp. But when it comes to spiritual dimension, I know how little we had explored as students of medicine. It is no different in other sectors as well. As Maria Lucia rightly said, this was considered partly to be in the domain of religion alone, and therefore people either felt a lack of understanding or deeper understanding to be able to explore that, or they had serious reservations in wanting to explore it in a neutral setting. So this is where the consortium came in. So even though it seems common sense, it hadn't been done before to bring people from different disciplines to do it. So I want to say how rich and how enriching it has been as part of the consortium. Now, coming to India, Christina, allow me to share in 3 parts. First is just India, and I'm very grateful that we have an opportunity to pilot it I want to acknowledge upfront the work within Shanti Ashram that is being led by the Bala Shanti program, very, very well coordinated by Deepa, my colleague, as well as Vijay. I see they have logged in as well today, and their wonderful team. India is home to the greatest numbers of children. We have declared ourselves the most populous country in the world. Every fifth child in the world is from India. So there is a demographic pull that is there in terms of piloting it. I must also acknowledge it is only in the current education policy of India that came out last year that the early childhood education piece has been integrated to the entire educational journey. So for about 70 years since India won independence, early childhood was really in the informal domain. People picked it up and did. Of course, there was rigor. We have from the tradition of Mahatma Gandhi, Shanti Ashram was inspired by Mahatma Gandhi's vision. There was this exploration of basic education. And so early childhood was part of it. Our colleagues from Montessori school. But what I want to say is it was not part of the formal education piece. So again, demographics, the education system, the early childhood piece being a standalone floating piece. And the third thing was the multicultural context of and multi-religious context never found its way from home to the school. Various reasons, and I will not go into details, from our very painful experience of winning India's independence itself, where there were religious riots. So there was this kind of reactionary secularism. But what it really did was it compartmentalized what the child experienced at home and what the child experienced in school. So just those three factors there. Now, Shanti Ashram, the Bala Shanti program or the early childhood program was started in 1991. So it's an old, mature system. It serves all children. It's open to all, but its focus is on vulnerable children and children from low socioeconomic settings. It came from the understanding that education as a building block for life must start early, and because of the setting of deprivation, must be taken to vulnerable communities. And therefore, positioning of these centers there. Again, as I mentioned, the gap in the learning environment and learning acknowledgement of the interreligious setting. So at the Bala Shanti program, we start at 3. At 3, they come in and they spend 2 full years before they join the formal education. There is, from the beginning, 30 years ago, a very clear space for spiritual development. We have done it using everyday practices which children are familiar with. We have done it keeping in mind the multi-religious setting. We have done it in combination with parents and community. So that was a very important part in the way that we say at the Bala Shanti program. We say engagement of the child, engagement of the family, engagement of the community. In every layer, there is this multi-religious dimension that is there. I must also say initially, even when we said parents, the primary engagement was with mothers. But I'm very, very happy to say that in the last 10 years, which is in the 3rd decade of its implementation, we've been able to work with a lot more fathers. And this is something that I want to acknowledge. Now, in the Bala Shanti program, there's also a division of time, not only for introduction to reading and writing, but also introduction to, for example, practical life-oriented skills. And this, I think, has been, therefore, a representation of not only knowledge-oriented early education, but life experience-oriented. So work with environment, work with religious communities around visits to places of worship, storytelling, using a lot of the local context has gone on. So it is a mature program. It addresses a specific need in the vulnerable community. It also, in its 3rd decade, is beginning to acknowledge another vital experience in India, which is social distance. In an unequal society, not only do we have to speak of deprivation and powerlessness, but also in a growing economy like India, where you're born, to whom you're born, can determine where you end up. So this is also, I think, the quality of education has been a very active tool in bridging social distance. Now, this evening when I was preparing, I was thinking, what is the closest model that we have in looking at these overlapping three circles? And it could be that this is a socio-ecological model where we put the child in the center and we look at the increasingly growing circles where people interact. And I'm very, very happy to say that in the Balashanti program, we have worked always with the child and the family, but we have brought in early childhood issues up to the policy level. And this is where the piloting of the toolkit was very welcomed. So we had always integrated the spaces and interventions to nurture spiritual development. We called it peace education, but we had not formalized it, meaning we had not taken the time to write it down. The practice continued. So when the piloting happened, I think for us, there were three important things, and I want to share this with you. First, in the toolkit, if you look at the booklets, and I invite all of you to explore this resource, it's such a rich resource put together and very easy to be adapted, was the conceptual basis. And as an active member of the consortium, we brought in our perspective. So this was from the ground to the thinking table. But when we take it back, like in all cases, it is a live titration. So when we took it back as well, there were spaces for discussion on the conceptual part. Now, as I said, we have worked intimately with parents. We've also worked very intimately with the early childhood educators. I don't know how it is in the rest of the world. May I say, from my context in India, it is one of the toughest jobs because you're closer to the community. The support system is not the same as in a full formal education system. So the early childhood educator has to take a lot of responsibility. And therefore, when we were piloting, we said we will devote enough time to discuss, to review, and to spend time in training and finding common language. Adaptation is not just contextual adaptation. I think it is also about understanding how we approach it. So, Christina, that was the second piece we did. We are just at the moment completed our survey. And I hope someday Deepa and Vijay will present this, how actively in 10 villages, over 150 or 60 parents participated. And just those simple questions, there were moments of quiet silence when they were asked. Maria Lucia spoke about those two goals. One is investing in the holistic development of a child with spiritual development. There was no two questions. Even a parent, a father or a mother with lesser education, but with the experience of a parent, was very clear that a child's spirituality must be nurtured. And then a few questions later, when Deepa asked, she came back and told me one day, when they asked about violence and whether violence was practiced in the family, there was a quiet silence. So, I think the toolkit, Christina, has also given not just the educators, the early childhood educators in Balashanti program, an opportunity to go deepen and to understand what this means and to create a framework. I think it has also given parents a space to see the gap between what is ideal and what is real, what we know and what we do. And therefore, we are at that stage. We have finished the training. We are translating the toolkit into our local language, which is Tamil. We have completed the survey, and we are in the early stages of preparing materials in our integration. So I think overall, Christina, the benefit will be we will be part of a global movement that is looking at meeting a much needed resource and a gap. We'll be doing it. And at the level of India, I think we will be producing experience and evidence that can help people to see how this can come into early childhood education. We are, from the beginning, I'm very grateful to Vijay, who's also joined in. From the beginning itself, we have a community of practice. While we are piloting it, I don't remember the exact number, but about 10 institutions who have early childhood intervention. They're observers and they've been part of the training. So already in the implementation, we have what I may say, committed learners who could then take it to the diverse settings that India provides to her children. But if I may say just one more thing, Mahatma Gandhi often said, if we want real peace in the world, we have to begin with children. And I think beginning with children in a way that is foundational, early childhood, but also I think collaborative, I think will help us. And that's exactly what Balashanti program is doing while it attempts to pilot this rich global resource that we have put together. Thank you, Christina.
Thank you so much. There's so much richness in that comment already. I guess just pulling out some of the key themes. You're in a multi-religious setting, right? So that's something specific to the Indian context. You're working in an early childhood center setting. There's a history of supporting spiritual development, but not necessarily in a very, let's say, kind of tailored or toolkit formal manner. And so this is kind of providing support. And then that piece around using it as a tool for reflection and pause, and even having the parents just asking a simple survey question, having that moment of, yes, this is so important. We really value spiritual development. And then that connection to, oh, wait, is violence happening in the home? And a moment for pause there and reflection. Well, thank you for that opening comment. We'll move from India to Brazil. Nelson, do you mind briefly sharing a little bit about the Brazilian context and your programming? Thank you.
Nosotros trabajamos en la comunidad hace 40 años. Son cerca de 14,000 comunidades en 2,000 municipios. Y la idea
For 4 years in the communities in several municipalities. But our idea is to empower, especially women, so that with more knowledge, they can change the practice of how to nurture children, how to raise children. And especially here, we had an experience 1 year before, so we can understand how this works in the community. And this was very impressive because they had a very positive opening to that. Now we adapted it and we made it a mobile app so that all parents can have these materials. And it was very interesting that this not only led to incur in less costs, and also all the parents that have the material, they can share this to other families, with the neighbors, with friends as well, and they can be hosts of the action, even in order to make it bigger. There's a very interesting experience, and I think we are pushing very strong to the future.
Thank you. Thanks, Nelson. Yes, so in Brazil, we have, I think, something unique thus far, which is the creation of this mobile app, right? So with the goal in part to kind of foster greater access and utilize technology. So thank you for the opening comment, and we'll come back to you again shortly. And for now, I'll ask Hermana Lupita to explain a little bit about the context, her own context, implementing the toolkit. Thanks.
Buenos días a todos. Bueno, pues soy de
Good
las
morning, everyone. I come from the Franciscan Sisters of the Immaculate Conception in Mexico. And a bit of the context that we're living, and something a place where we're applying these toolboxes in 4 of our schools in states or places where there's a lot of violence and narco traffic, and in a orphan children or female children who were abused or suffer from violence. And in this context, we have a foster home. And with this toolbox, we're enriching the programs that we're working on. We have psychologists, religious sisters as well, teachers are participating in these projects too. And we have a program called School for Parents that is implemented in our schools. This program, uh, you ask for the parents used to go to school, they had a 1 hour talk. But now that we have implemented this School for Parents in the toolbox, it has been a different dynamic because they have a bigger participation from the parents, and they are actively participating, and they are the main characters in this context because they carry out activities and they take homework uh, for their children. And this is an activity that there's an activity that is suggested to be done on the day by day, and later after a month they can talk to a psychologist in order to know how this work was working for children, and they are getting rid of violence at home and raising violence. We have testimonies of how parents gain consciousness because in school they are being taught not to practice violence. If I was taught that in school, now I have to put into practice. So this has been a extenuating work. It hasn't been easy, and I can tell you more about it at some point. And in our foster home, has been hard that the tutors attend the sessions because we have the girls in our foster home because they don't have parents that can go with them. So their tutors, uncles, uh, grandparents go as well. But we keep them motivated so that they can attend every month. They take the girls on Saturday and Sunday, and then they can start practicing these toolbox activities so that they can uh, get rid of violence concepts like beating up a girl or threatening her. That is wrong. We have been helping with this model in our foster home for girls, and this is how we have been working on it. We have been implementing it in our foster home, and later on in the project, our goal is to finish with the sessions. Up to December, we have 4 periods applied, but we will be implementing this more in other schools and in other foster homes within the congregation. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Hermana Lupita, for sharing a little bit about the context in which the sisters are implementing. So there's multiple, right? There's the education setting, as well as the foster home, and you really touched on this engagement with either the adults or potentially other caregivers in the lives of these children, and really the importance of working with them in partnership to support the development of these young children or young girls in the case of the foster home. So thank you. We'll come back to you again shortly. Before we finish in Mexico, we'll jump over to Pakistan. Afshan, do you mind sharing us a little bit about your context, please?
Thank you so much. Hello, everyone, and a very good evening to all of you. I'm Afshan Jamal, and I am working with the Islamic Relief Pakistan office as Child Protection and Youth Development Specialist. And in Pakistan, I'm associated to this cause for the last 20 years. And today I'm very happy and excited to share what we have learned and also learn from your experiences in different contexts. So in Pakistan, Islamic Relief Pakistan has been implementing this flagship program of child protection for the past 31 years. And we have worked on so many aspects of child protection, but this spiritual development is quite new for us in our context. So it's an exciting and new journey for us as well. And so far, at the moment, we are at the phase 2 of this toolkit implementation experience. So in Pakistan, there is this diversity in terms of its geography and the provinces where we are implementing this program. And especially there are two different contexts as when we are working in development context as well as the humanitarian context. As most of you know that we experienced catastrophic floods last year in Pakistan, and there were huge losses in the provinces which were affected by the floods in Pakistan, and there was a huge number of children who lost their homes and schools and lives, and they were placed and they were forced to take refuge in temporary shelters, and till day they are not reinstated into their normal routine lives because of the devastation which happened there in those districts and provinces, particularly in Sindh and Balochistan and some parts of Khyber Pakhtunkhwa as well. So Islamic Relief Pakistan has been working in that emergency response as a leading organization, and we have been supporting children in partnership with other stakeholders and UN agencies and state departments. So taking this toolkit implementation in that context, as well as the regular development programs, where we have been engaged with the communities and particularly the orphans families whom we are sponsoring. There are more than around 7,000 families in Pakistan which are being supported by Islamic Relief at the moment and their families. And it's a whole life cycle throughout where we support these children and their families. And we take this journey up to their 24 years when they complete their university or higher education. And then we integrate them into the society through, training them, counseling them, and guiding them throughout their professional career as well. So there are multiple initiatives, but this toolkit is quite helpful in understanding and adding value to the package and the services we are providing to the children, specifically the children who are orphans and street children who are quite marginalized and going through and are exposed to so many kind of abuse and exploitation when they are roaming around the streets, when they are out of school, when they don't have their basic facilities or the basic rights are not being fulfilled. So I think this is one of the areas which was overlooked or not being given that attention in our program, because we were closely working with the communities, and that was one of the feedback and the impact we have been able to create through our programming lacked this aspect. So I think it's something which was missing, and we are very happy to take this forward. So at the moment, as I shared that we are in phase 2, and we had already completed the TOT training of trainers in Pakistan, and now we are carrying out the training of facilitators in different provinces. As I shared that we have recently carried out this training of facilitators in Azad Kashmir, where not just our team members, but also representatives from UN agencies, social welfare departments, state departments, and renowned faith leaders, as well as the district faith leaders and directors of religious affairs were also part of this training, which will be really helpful in taking up that initiative in that particular state. And it will have a multiplier effect, because if we will take it independently, that will not have that coverage. So definitely including all participants and stakeholders on board will definitely have a greater impact, and they will also be able to replicate this training and this toolkit implementation within their programs and departments. So that is one of the added values and advantages we have. Also, we think that as far as adapting this toolkit into our own country context is concerned, we are taking into account our own cultural context as well as Islamic faith context. And we are incorporating examples while taking this thing forward in the field from our Islamic scriptures and the work we are doing in the field since 1992 in Pakistan through Islamic Relief Pakistan. So that people can relate to what we are saying and through the experiences and whatever they are experiencing in their own communities and their own local context. So that makes more sense to them, and they don't take it as something outside agenda or something which has been imposed to them. So I think that is one of the strategies we have adapted, and that is also very helpful. And we have also translated the tools in local language, that is Urdu. So that is also very helpful. Then we have included faith leaders in the training of trainers from the local communities so that when we will be replicating these trainings. So our next training is being planned for the Punjab province, where the faith leader who is a part of the training of trainers will also be a part of trainers in that training, which will be helpful in taking on board all those faith leaders from the local communities from the province we are planning ahead. And then as the next step, we will be replicating and taking this up in all other provinces with their own faith leaders. So we have also included some female faith leaders, as well as we are also inviting representatives from UNICEF and other UN agencies, Social Welfare Department. When Maria Lucia was in Pakistan, so she also met with the chairperson of National Commission on the Rights of Children, because when you take on board all these important stakeholders who are quite relevant and who are there responsible to take this initiative forward, so that helps a lot. So Chairman NCRC is also on board on this initiative, and all the government departments and representatives are quite happy with this initiative in Pakistan, because this is something new for us in our context. And Islamic Relief is the one who is piloting and pioneering this initiative in collaboration with Arigato International and this consortium. So I think it will be a great experience for all of us, and I think it will be really helpful in our context, and it will be quite beneficial for the children and the communities we serve. So with this new aspect of child protection within our programming, we are quite hopeful that we will be able to learn from this journey throughout, and from all other colleagues around the globe, as I was listening to our respected colleagues from Brazil, India, and other countries. So that was very interesting, and definitely it will be helpful for us to add more and more value throughout the journey as we take it up in Pakistan. And also the recent meeting was also helpful when we were meeting and discussing this among the consortium members, and the tools which have been developed, and translations have been done. So similarly, we are translating it into Urdu, so that may also be helpful to some of the other colleagues across the globe. So that's it from our side. And if you have any questions, I'm here to respond to those questions and learn from you all. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much, Afshan. Really, really encouraging to hear about the efforts that are quite comprehensive, and it sounds like quite wide scale, at least upcoming within Pakistan. and the relation to child protection work, working directly with families, as well in some context working with orphans and street children, and how you're engaging with that across the country in multiple departments. Thank you. Afshan mentioned a point that's worth reiterating to those that are participating. If questions arise, please feel free to drop them in the chat. I hope we'll have some time at the end. We may need to pick up the cadence a little bit, so we do have time at the end for questions. So I'll pass it to Esme to share about the context with World Vision in Mexico. We'll then go through and have one more round of questions for each panelist before we open more broadly. So Esmeralda, would you please share a bit about programming with World Vision in Mexico? Thank you.
Sí, muchas gracias, Cristi.
Yes, of course. Thank you very much, Christy. Well, we are implementing this in marginated communities that are of high vulnerability, indigenous communities, and the main types of violence that we can see in this context is physical violence, economical violence, negligence, and abandonment. So for us, the implementation is in the Catholic Church in with the deacons. Yeah, and sometimes people cannot attend because they are very far from the deaneries or deanships. So we could add this toolbox within the practices and the programs in the church to godparents, parents, as well as caregivers, so that it could be taught to them. This has been a beautiful experience for us because the facilitators are not the World Vision field team. We train the catechists so they can implement the toolbox in their communities. For us, this is more sustainable because it is not a people that communities don't know. It's people within the community who are implementing this. So the profile for the facilitators for applying the toolbox are housewives, houseworkers, students, teachers. So it is a very variable profile, and this has enabled us or allowed us to give continuity in the program. We train 60 catechists, men and women, so they could implement this with the families. These are members that are, their job is to be catechists within the church, so they have this closeness to children, parents. We are benefiting 600 parents, godparents, and caregivers that in the beginning they didn't actually consider this approach in first infant. Sometimes they believe that playing is something that is not part of the development, but is something a surprise, and they have different actions on the field, and this have enabled us to benefit 600 children and their first infants uh, directly, and indirectly we're also benefiting the rest of the family members. They are big families where they can have 2, 3 children, maybe a young people or adolescents, and we know that this is a benefit. Within the organization, we have 6 lines of action, and this toolbox fits perfectly in the line that has to do with violence prevention and child labor. So this toolbox has allowed us to complement the work that we're doing, and also what allow us to focus and all the work in order to promote tenderness education, create safe spaces, self-esteem, and protections of children and adolescents. This toolbox has included this tenderness education, create these spaces within the community because the church allows to create a safe space for children where not only the parents and also the voluntaries and the catechists are applying this methodology within the communities. We have a model called Crianza con Ternura, raising with tenderness, that we have been implementing it. And this model tells us that we should not justify any kind of violence to raising children, nor adolescents, because we know what it can generate. Maria Lucia already told us, she already told us what it generates in the first infancies. And in Crianza con Ternura, something that we mentioned is, I'm sorry, someone has the microphone open.
Ha sido muy importante. Las experiencias que nos han dicho las catequistas es
For the experiences that the catechist has told us, for example, Silverio, a 25-year-old catechist, he has been using the toolbox. He said that before only moms used to attend, and now both parents are going. So this has been wonderful, because parents and godparents are attending. And I hope we can share the pictures later on. We have 20 or 50 people, instead of 20, 50 or 60 people group. And they love it. They ask, they're interested. And the facilitators, they were scared because there were small groups. Now when they see 60, 50 people groups, they are also strengthening their capacities to become facilitators and to teach this topic. So for us within the organization, this models or this toolbox allow us to make it sustainable, because it doesn't depend on the organization, but we actually create a capacity within the community to have facilitators. They are there, and at some point they can become trainers or to other facilitators. And with this experience, something that they acquire, or something that the parents were told is this dynamic that is carried out in the group, these daily activities, why don't you teach them to children in catechism? So they were having these techniques, they were having these dynamics that allow children to reflect, and that's the reason why this toolbox has been very helpful. The permanency in the groups is something that is very constant. It's something that we didn't see, or that the church didn't actually experience or saw within their talks. And this is the context that we have and the organization. Thank you.
There we go. It wasn't allowing me to come off mute. Sorry about that. Esme, thank you so much for sharing a little bit about the context in Veracruz with World Vision and community partners. I had the privilege of visiting in June this year, and so I can kind of provide a testament to how far it is for these community members to travel, often by foot, to these centers where the sessions are being held. It's quite long, and I think it's really encouraging to hear that actually the numbers have been increasing through the programming, and really powerful to hear that kind of through this training of community members, of the catechist members who are part of the communities themselves, there's this kind of ripple effect of both strengthening kind of the ties and the facilitation techniques, et cetera, within the community, as well as fostering stronger engagement of families themselves. So thank you. So we're now going to shift gears a little bit. I'll have one question. I kindly ask that we try to keep responses around 2 minutes for the next set of questions. So we have a little bit of time at the end for questions from our audience. So thank you all. I think some key themes for me that came out are, you know, all of these 5 panelists reference context of vulnerability. So all of the communities that they're working with are ones that are facing adversity of different kinds. Although there's also a lot of differences. There's different faith traditions that we're hearing from, and there's different contexts of implementation from kind of working directly with religious leaders, working with community members, working in context of orphanages or foster homes, early child care centers. So there is a really diverse or wide array, so to speak, of context in which the toolkit is being implemented. So thank you for spotlighting those different contexts, and hopefully it provides a background for the next round of questions. So Vinu, the next question is for you. So in just, you know, in a few minutes, could you please share a little bit more about how the inclusion of the spiritual domain on the model of holistic child development enhances your programs for families and early childhood development? You touched on this a little bit in your in your first comment, but if there's anything else you'd like to add, please go ahead.
Okay. I can't.
Vino, you are unmuted, so you can speak.
Oh, okay. Okay, if you can hear me now. Just, Christina, three things or 4 things to answer to that question. And I hope this is useful for all of us. I think the most important thing, Christina, was finding shared language. Because of the way the consortium met, each of us have different definitions for spiritual development, or at least we have different understandings. So I saw this at the consortium, and I see it again in the India implementation. We have shared language, vocabulary that is discussed, that is dynamic, and that is available. Now, because of this, I think because of the shared understanding and struggling, we also have a safe space, Christina. Religious leaders and faith communities don't feel defensive, and people from the sciences don't feel that they have to come with their own. So if I may say, Christina, there is a safe space, and who benefits most? Children. And therefore, I'm delighted that at the global level and at the India level, we are beginning to struggle together and find a space, a safe space with mutual respect. These 2 are intangibles, but they will be crucial in a country like India, where early childhood is joining formal education. Also, because the India edition is multi-religious, we might have a gift to offer to India's education system that is acceptable to all. So there is something there. Now, in terms of, I think I'd like to speak a little bit about the brain-body connect. You know, Maria Lucia touched upon predictors of happiness, predictors of resilience. We had understandings that were different, meaning evidence as sought by religious communities and evidence as sought by communities and evidence sought by scientists were all there, but in different ways. So I think neurosciences is giving us, again, a shared understanding. So the religious communities would always say, didn't we tell you a child who can meditate quietly has the ability to concentrate? Didn't we tell you that a child who learns early vocabulary around nonviolence? But I think its impact on the brain, and especially the imaging techniques that are coming out of neurosciences, is helping this evidence to be shared and therefore co-studied. And I would like to say that I think because again of this triangulation of knowledge and experience, the child stands to benefit. For example, one thing that is as simple as verbal abuse today, both scientists and religious communities have gone back and studied it in their own way. So, Maria Lucia was speaking about which part of the brain and what are the hormones that are secreted when spiritual development is nurtured and what is the correlate. Similarly, I think today we know in early child development that this quiet nurturing space enhances a child's understanding of its own or her own or his own innate spirituality. And therefore, in the Balashanti program, for example, this nurturing of spiritual development is embedding in a very significant way child participation. When your self-efficacy is realized so early, when you are able to understand your identity in a safe environment and you don't have to compartmentalize, then also I think your participation and your self-presentation becomes much better. What does this do? This, as again was said, this allows a child to develop and thrive and grow. But it also allows, and this is something very important, as children in Hindu families, we are always told, you are born for a purpose. Now, this can be something very simple. They will always, your grandparents are never shy to tell you, you have come in an independent body because God wants you to do something. The divine grace wants you to do something. Now, that would be in modern language, coming alive of Maslow's self-efficacy model, self-realization, self-actualization. But I think doing it in early childhood, the returns are far more. The impact, both in terms of a child's positive thriving, but also in terms of protection, is far high. So I want to summarize, Christina, not take more time, this intangible that we are doing through the toolkit, but also the bigger conversations around it, shared language, safe space. And then because of that mutual respect and feeling that we don't have to be defending, children benefit because we are able to bring good practices from everywhere. Mindfulness, for example, I was very happy to hear Sister Lupita from Mexico, the Franciscan prayer that children say in Balashanti program, make me an instrument in thy peace, it is in giving that we receive. When they repeat it over and over, there is both a journey within and a journey beyond. So I think this not only in terms of protection for violence, but in terms of a positive nurture and a foundational enrichment, I think is something that I want to bring to our notice. And I hope in all the sites and everywhere, we will not shy away from this multidisciplinary conversations. In India, Christina, Maria Lucia is aware, we have brought almost 6 to 7 disciplines who work with children in early childhood. So it's also for us an enhanced platform for dialogue around the child. Thank you, Christina.
Really powerful to hear kind of this triangulation of different perspectives and fields, but coming together with kind of a shared vision and shared language, as you said. And then those really tangible benefits that you named, that by fostering this safe space, which, as we know from the science of learning and development, is absolutely critical to fomenting the well-being and development of young children and really children and adolescents of any age, can foster the self-efficacy, this participation, understanding of purpose. I noted here as with the Hindu tradition. So really powerful. And of course, emphasizing that beginning early, as we now know, through decades, really, of very, very substantial evidence base, that starting earlier brings kind of stronger returns and creates that foundation that really lasts the rest of your life. So, Venu, thank you so much for making those points. Afshan, I'll go over to you. And you talked a little bit about, in your opening remarks, the adaptation in the Pakistan context, both in terms of language adaptation, right, which is probably step one, but as well as some adaptation in terms of the Islamic faith tradition. So could you briefly talk a little bit more about what adaptations have been made in order to meet the needs of your context. And you've shared with us who are the beneficiaries already, but have you seen any benefits thus far? It might be too early to say, but if you have seen any, please share those as well.
Okay, thank you, Christina. I would like to share that the adaptations we have been able to make so far in the communities is that, as I shared, that we have included faith leaders from the local communities we are working with. And already we had included those faith leaders from the communities in previous initiatives we have been working on in those communities, like Channels of Hope Child Protection Initiative, which was an ongoing initiative of Islamic Relief Pakistan in the communities, where we took on board the faith leaders, and then they were advocating the communities on girls' education and against corporal punishment in the schools, with the school teachers, and on child protection and child safeguarding in the communities. And then they were engaging the communities and parents on how to make those communities more safe for their children. And it's everyone's business, not just one person's responsibility, but actually child protection is everyone's business and everyone's agenda. So that was the aim for taking those faith leaders on board. So that was what we were doing as a part of Channels of Hope initiative. And they were also doing sermons in Juma prayers in the mosques on Friday. So that was very effective. So we are again building on that base and the initiatives which are there already in the communities and in the fields where we are working, so that adding more value to those initiatives which we have already implemented. So taking that forward, we have engage with the faith leaders. Also, we are trying to include more and more female faith leaders from those communities, also including school teachers and the parents and caregivers who are there as the people responsible for ensuring the protection of their children. Also, the people who have a major role in ensuring and nurturing the spiritual development of children in the early years. So that is one of those things. And also, I would like to share that we have already established very effective community forums in the form of women's self-help groups, as well as we have guardian groups, and we have childcare groups, which are composed of parents, teachers, faith leaders, social activists, lawyers, and youth from the communities, whom we are training and bringing them as a workforce or as a forum, community forum, who are active and including and taking on board all the community people and parents particularly, so that they can act together as one force to ensure that their children are safe and are protected from the exploitation and abuse they are facing in their lives in the communities.
Afshan, thank you. I you know, that the phrase, it takes a village, that's what comes to mind. You're painting this really clear picture of community members and all the adults that touch the lives of children coming together for this joint mission of supporting the well-being and safety of children. And you know, you mentioned you're really leveraging existing programming that was already established, but then kind of embedding the spiritual domain into that programming to kind of further strengthen that lens. And just noting, you know, the faith leaders, as folks know, have a lot of power in their community, right? And if that can be leveraged to support the well-being and safety of children and women writ large, that's a really powerful lever to be used. So thank you, Asham, for sharing that context.
I would just like
Yes,
to add that
please.
this is what we have experienced during the previous initiative and during this training of trainers as well, because when we take faith leaders on board and when they talk about all these things in the community, in within their people and within the field context, that makes a huge difference and that makes a change. Because when keep on advocating ourselves, that people think that it's they are just trying to bring in their agenda and they are dictating us, so they don't take that seriously. But faith leaders have a say and have an influence within their community, and when they talk about something, when they advocate for a cause, so people really take it as something serious, and people do this to them. So that made a difference in the previous experiences as well, and this time I think since they are on board and they were appreciating throughout the training process when they were with us, so they really like the idea, and it's not something which is different from our faith. It is something which has been emphasized in Islam as well, that we need to be really mindful and take care of the spiritual development of our children during early years. So Islam really uh, emphasizes on this thing. So I think this is something which can really uh, create an impact if we pay attention to the early years where children can be given more attention and have more opportunities to develop and be safe, and so that they can lead a better and brighter life. So
thank you. Thanks, Asham, for those remarks. Much appreciated. I am. So my next question will go to Hermana Lupita. We have just 10 minutes left, and I would love to hear from Esme, Nelson, and Hermana Lupita. So we'll shoot for around 2 minutes, more or less, for responses. So Hermana Lupita, can you share with us, you kind of gave us a little bit of a tidbit that there's been some challenges in implementation. There always is, right, when we're trying something new. So could you tell us a little bit about the challenges you faced, but simultaneously the opportunities you see within the context of the Franciscan Sisters?
Sí, muchas gracias, Cristina. Bueno, pues en uno de los principales retos y desafíos que hemos tenido,
Thank you
bueno,
very
como
much. One of the main challenges that we have had, and also me as a trainer, or we as trainers, there are 5 places that I already mentioned. We're implementing the toolbox. Mexico is big, so the states where we go to, Michoacán, Guanajuato, and Puebla, from where I am based in Mexico City.
son largos, ¿no? Entonces, un reto
Distances are long. So one of the challenges that we have had is that one mainly. So we, religious leaders, also Sister Rosara is with me. What we have done, and that instead of that the facilitators come to Mexico City, we went to each one of the states. That was the most viable thing to do, and the most reaching as well, because more actors could participate in the schools. We went to schools, we gave the trainings, and we had even more participants than if we had asked people to come to Mexico City. We would have had less people coming. So we went to Michoacán, the 3 places in Guanajuato, and we went to Puebla as well in the foster home. This is one of the main challenges. But now, talking about implementation, the toolbox in each of the places, one big challenge that we had in September, that's when we started with implementation of the first session, the main challenge was spirituality. That parents heard that we were talking about spirituality. To them, it was automatically connected to religion. However, in Mexico, yes, we are Catholics, but within the context and within the schools, yeah, they all participate in festivities, in prayers, but they always relate spirituality with religion. And some of the comments that we heard in the beginning is that you will be talking about God, you will make us pray, and yeah, they had this part. Yeah, it was hard to get rid of this kind of understanding. What helped us a lot in the beginning was the first topic in schools. And it was helpful because we had the first session and we were teaching spirituality in a different outlook, not prayers and all that, but our facilitators, when we were teaching this well, they thought that we would just going to teach them how to pray, that we were going to uh, teach them in general how to pray. But when we were done with these workshops, I learned that spirituality, or they learned as well, what a spirituality is something different. And I can relate it with everything that surrounds me, with the people, with nature, with family, with God as well, but being conscious in a different way. This help us to work in a different way and also um, to look uh, to look for it or to teach them in a different way so that it's not related automatically to religion. And with the parents, it has changed a bit. It has been a big opportunity for us in School for Parents, and it hasn't reached the prevention protocols against abuse that we have in our institutions. So this is something that has been enriched in our programs. And well, this toolbox is a huge opportunity um, of what we are doing and what we're organizing in our foster homes. Yes, of course, these are challenges. The main challenge is that people keep attending and that we keep increasing the numbers of participants. Also, order to maintain at least the same number or to increase it. This is uh, um, the people that go to the foster home is where we have the safer attendance because the girls in the foster home don't only stay there with us, they go back home on every weekend. And we have had participation every month. We have
Okay.
been able to share this, and parents can talk to us. This has been very enriching. Thank you.
Thank you, Hermana Lupita. Nelson, I saw you went off mute. Would you like to add something to her comment?
Well, no Brasil, professores, médicos, incluso administradores de unidades residenciadas estão obrigados a denunciar os casos
In
de violência.
Brazil, doctors are by law or mandatorily to uh, inform all the cases of violence, and sometimes parents can end up in prison, but families sometimes hide it and they don't search or look for help. We, as religious communities, we can help and we can support families without condemn any family members before reestablishing or try to establish, we try to establish harmony in the family. Our role is to support families to reconstruct even the family and not to dismantle. The toolkit is a priority. This is something that is working strongly on the prevention and within dozens of families in our community, and we build a network, and we can also escalate even when community solutions have failed. But this is something beneficial to reduce violence in women. We have been working on that, and that is why the importance of working with all families, with all kinds of religions, and also to building a unity network within the families. We highlight the importance of becoming a space in which spirituality is the foundation. There's no uh, um, uh, damnation, but there's they were merciful. There's mercy there, and people feel helped. People don't feel judged, and they feel that they have a support. And also, the carers should be the main characters. As Sister Teresina, that she's applying this methodology 400 kilometers away of our headquarters. She said that she told the families that they can download this app, and this make parents to feel that they are part of everything. I would like to thank all of you that shared your experiences, and we will keep working for a better life. Thank you very much.
Nelson, thank you. I know we're just about out of time. Esme, would you like to chime in with a last word or comment?
Sí, pues para nosotros esto ha sido una experiencia muy
Yes, for
agradable.
us, this has been a very nice experience, especially to see how church, catechists, and the same community are creating these safe spaces. How, based on this toolbox, we are starting to see the involvement in the first infants and also parents to family activities. I think this is something important because, as Sister Lupita was saying, the bigger challenges that we have here are the distances. And this is not helping the sense of community. But the other topic that we have here, the issue or challenge, is the healing space for parents in general and for adults. And as long as we don't heal the heart, it will be very hard to visualize and to put children and adolescents as a priority. We have to heal, and spirituality is not only religion, it is how this integral part of the whole help us heal. And based on that, I can make children to or girls or young children in general to be visualized. They are participating and they are carrying out activities with adults. So this is a beautiful work because we can see how the community is contributing from the spirituality standpoint and how they are creating the safe spaces. This will allow us to decrease violence, starting from us healing, and so that throughout this healing, we can prioritize childhood. Thank you.
Esme, you gave me goosebumps. What a beautiful way
Es
to
me
close.
diste,
Um,
me dejaste la piel de gallina con esta hermosa manera.
Sorry for our translator. I think we can hear you on the English channel. Sorry about
Also,
that. Thank you. Esme, thank you. Such a powerful way to close today's webinar. I think there's just very quickly a few points I want to underscore. This difference between religion and spirituality, and how religion can be a tool for spirituality, but they aren't necessarily equivalents, right? And how through spirituality, I love this phrasing of healing, how it can bring community together. Nelson, the comment you made about the role of faith leaders really as trusted resources in a community that bring folks together in a manner that lifts everyone up when done with care, and how by healing community, we can also better support and be better caregivers and leaders for young children, and how that there is one of the links to the protection of children from violence. So thank you all. Maria Lucia, any final remarks? I want to very, very profoundly thank each of our panelists. We know you all are working really hard to implement the toolkit in the various contexts. You're trying something new. We're learning from it. And I know in future moments, I'm sure we'll have an opportunity to dive into those learnings deeper. But thank you for all that you do more broadly for the well-being of children within your communities, as well as for sharing your insights with all of us today. It's been a really powerful testament. So thank you so much.
Thank you, Cristina. Thank you, Vino, Hermana Lupita, Nelson, Afshan, and Esmeralda for the commitment, the passion, the contribution. I want to say special thanks to Cristina and to Porticus North America, who has been supporting financially the implementation of the toolkit, particularly in Mexico, but also the development of the monitoring and evaluation framework that is being developed in collaboration with the Global Center for the Development of the Whole Child at University of Notre Dame, and that we hope the results of the findings during this next year, as we are kind of connecting the dots, so from the training of trainers, training of facilitators, and implementation until September 2024, we'll be able to release some of the findings of the implementation in February 2025. And this is a journey, and these are champions of this initiative. And I'm very glad that we are working together as champions of this topic that is not prioritized very often, and that we are building this evidence together, and not just for the sake of implementing a toolkit, but actually for healing families, for reconstructing the social fabric, but also for creating better environments for children and supporting their flourishing. So thank you so much, and thank you all the participants for joining us, and we'll be sharing the recording of this webinar, and also we'll be sharing with you if there will be upcoming webinars and more information. Thank you so much.
Thank you. Bye.
Thank you, Cristina. Amazing
you.
moderation. Thank you.
Thanks all.
Lovely hearing everybody.
Thank you, Christina.
Take care.
Thanks.
Thank you so much.
Christine. Thank you, Beth. Thank you, Vedika. Thanks, Maria Lucia.